Ladies and gentlemen, let me just be the first to assure you that everything is fine. That you can go to Twitter and you can find a litany of voices all discussing the safety and security of our food system. And although you might look for any dissenting voices, you won't find them because it is no longer allowed to talk about food running out on Twitter. As of today, they have amended their use policy to get rid of this and other pesky conspiracy theories under the guise that they may be inciting harmful activity or violence from people. Specifically, talking about food shortages could lead to widespread panic or social unrest or large-scale disorder. In other words, their argument is that this is not protected speech because it's the equivalent of yelling fire in a crowded Twitter. But the problem, of course, is that there are tons of other people, including experts and the United Nations and JBS and Smithfield and Tyson, each of whom have shut down the largest meat packers in the United States right now, that are warning about the impending food shortages that will necessarily result when you shut down agriculture. That's what happens. That's what they create there. Without the meat coming out of those factories, it's not going to be on the stores. And as I warned in my last video, when we heard about Tyson moving workers willy-nilly from infected closed plants to the ones that were still open, like Waterloo, and I said, give it a couple days, Waterloo will be shut down too now. Yes, yesterday they closed down Waterloo. That is their largest pork processor in the United States. And that brings the total capacity that's shut down to 15% of the total U.S. pork production. This has significant ramifications beyond our company. It means the loss of a vital outlet for farmers and ranchers and contributes to the disruption of the nation's pork supply, to say the least. And that's just the latest shutdown in these continuing and cascading, the dominoes falling one after another, series of plant closures affecting the meat processing capacity. Indiana shutting down a meat plant by Tyson, and Tyson also shutting down their Washington beef facility. JBS shutting down another factory in Canada. It's just one after another. Every day it looks like this. Follow me on Twitter at Ice Age Farmer, and you'll just see one after another. I get posted. We're also now seeing warnings that the USDA inspectors themselves have been infected with this coronavirus and might be spreading it as they go from plant to do inspections. So it's just a question of who's watching the watchers at this point. Just a disaster on all fronts. And of course, many more plants are still at risk or have already been slowed down, their capacity greatly diminished. We read here from USA Today, operators may have to choose between workers' health or meat in the stores. And I just want to point out, there was another plant that has already been now shut down for 2 weeks that was scheduled to come back online. But the union is saying, hell no, we're not going in there. We're not going to come to work in those conditions again. You must be out of your mind. So although most of these plants have been closed indefinitely, even those that put a come back to work date on it aren't finding themselves able to start back up. So production is slowed down across the board. We are eating through our reserves. The USDA's report yesterday on cold storage revealed that we are taking a larger month-to-month drawdown in frozen pork stocks and in other proteins as well. And that was before these plants were even shut down. That's before we've even started feeling the real heat that results from these plants shut down. And like I said, experts across the industry are warning we're heading straight into this meat shortage. Prices are getting weird from the LA Times today. This really puts it all out there. This is what I've been saying for weeks, but now this is straight from the LA Times. Currently, 15% of hog slaughtering capacity is offline. There are additional slowdowns in beef, poultry, and pork. We went through each of the proteins in my last video and talked about the mass kills that are already going on. Euthanasia, it's horrific out there. We are in a sea of death, and you may not hear it or see it, but you can feel it if you know what's going on. This is a situation, yes, where pigs get euthanized and buried as supplies back up. Meanwhile, retail costs are going to rise as grocery stores will mandate rationing on pork chops. This is each of the things that we said in our 2-week outlook just last week. The National Guard was activated to help protect the supplies. There's the government getting involved to make sure continuity of food supply. Here, according to Dennis Smith, senior account executive at Archer, quote, meat shortages will be occurring 2 weeks from now in the retail outlets. This is exactly what we said. There is simply no spot pork available. The big box stores will probably get theirs, but nobody else has any chance. In March, frozen pork inventories, like we just looked, dropped 4% from February. That's the biggest drops in March since 2014. So we're drawing down what we do have frozen. And as he says here, when you talk about cold storage, it's never really that much. It's roughly about a week's worth of production in the freezer. So that's our buffer. Folks, we've shut down the processing. We've got a week of it in the freezer. And that's why 2 weeks from now, it will no longer be in the stores. You will be some cuts that aren't there at all. And on the rest of it, you'll be severely limited to what you can buy. This is why the Secretary of Agriculture today went to Trump and to VP Pence and said, look, we urgently need to help out farmers and ranchers, and we need to figure out how to get rid of all these animals that they're killing off. We need standards for humane euthanasia and disposal of animals. That should make it very clear that this is already an active problem, that there are ranchers across the nation right now who, rather than selling at a loss, because slaughterhouses will charge you if you go over their... It's, we heard from some other interviews why this is going on. But never mind, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. We're not allowed to talk about food shortages, even though we just heard the Secretary of Agriculture telling us that it's coming, and every other producer out there saying, I'm having to kill my hogs. There's nothing wrong, and I'm not allowed to tell you that the food might run out. Isn't it weird? As we burn through our freezer capacity, that suddenly social networks change their policy and we're not allowed to talk about this anymore? I guess we can still talk about the fact that there's a CO2 shortage, which affects our refrigeration, and as The Guardian pointed out, even affects our ability to keep water running in the municipal water systems. So residents of Washington were warned, you might go to the tap and not get any water. Maybe we'll have to start giving you water rationing as well, because we're not getting our CO2. They've already fallen 33% of normal, and we use that carbon dioxide to get a certain pH in your municipal water. So without it, we can't bring you water. And that means you're only going to be allowed, 20 gallons a day. Make something up. This is what's coming. And it's going to come. I can promise you this now. It's written on the wall because ADM today just announced they're going to shut down their ethanol production as well, which even further exacerbates the CO2 shortage. So all of these things are cascading. They're all mounting. Do we even need to bring up the fact that the NERC, the Nuclear Energy Regulatory Commission, has started within these last few weeks putting out feelers and saying, hey, are electrical companies going to be able to keep the lights on here? In fact, here we see work was continuing at the Plant Vogtle nuclear construction project after one of the site workers was positive for the virus. So they haven't shut down work yet, but this is the same kind of language that we saw just a few short weeks ago with the meat packers. And now there's 15% off the board. So by that logic, it's entirely reasonable to suspect that a week or two from now, we start losing 10 to 15% of our generation capacity off the grid and have rolling brownouts. So limits on your water, limits on your electricity, we can still talk about that because this hasn't manifested yet. But if they start putting... keep an eye out. Keep an eye out. This is still speculative at this point, but it's happening quickly. And like I said, the government is putting out warnings. NERC is saying you need to be prepared, and they're actually specifically calling out cyber attacks and social engineering attacks. So those, Chinese hackers could call up nuclear power plants and say, yeah, I'm supposed to be working from home, but I forgot my password. Can you reset it for me and get access to the nuclear power plant and shut down the grid? But like I said, that's all speculative, whereas the food system, that ship has sailed. These shortages are baked in. They will be happening now. The rationing in the next couple weeks here, you will see it. And it's not a coincidence, folks. Bill Gates, Cargill, who's big ag, and even PETA all partnered up years ago and said, we are going to get rid of animal agriculture. That was Memphis Meats. And then Bill Gates went on to fund with multiple millions of dollars also Impossible Foods, whose CEO said, yes, we're coming out. We're ending animal agriculture. These are their stated goals, and we are now watching them execute on them. This is why they were giving millions of dollars to these lab-grown protein companies. Look, the world without slaughter sounds great, but the slaughter is going on now. And the slaughter includes not just the animals at these operations that these ranchers are having to kill off and not get to market, but it includes those of us who depend on these systems to eat. That's the real slaughter they're doing right now. But we're not allowed to talk about that. And he just continues there. Bill Gates, $75 million, Impossible Burger. Look for Impossible Burgers at Burger King coming back once they can't get their beef anymore. But we're not allowed to talk about it. Everything's fine. I'm not inciting panic. In fact, I owe you an apology. You should not listen to me at all. I've been wrong all these years. They have no desire to take over our food supply. You shouldn't be growing your own food. You should not be spreading this word about this. You should never share this video by any means. Are you out of your mind? You're not allowed to talk about it on social media. Ladies and gentlemen, when the censorship is announced like this, I think it adds credibility to the message. And I do ask for you to spread this message. And I do ask for you to go find farmers and ranchers in your local area that need your help now. That's basically all of them. And lend a hand however you can. And make sure that we are building new systems that can feed our communities just as rapidly as they are actively tearing them down right now. It's a full-scale war. Food is the weapon. And this is where we are now. Please find my work directly on iceagefarmer.com, as I do not expect these channels, or my Twitter, for instance, to stick around much longer. Apparently, I'm violating the use policy by telling you what's really happening. Thanks for watching, folks. Let's go build new systems that will feed us into the future. Be well.